Do I really need to introduce Dr. Tharoor? Does he need introduction? We have a saying in Tamil, "Pookadaikku vilambaram thevaya." But I still have to introduce him for the benefit of those who may not know him. Today when I went to greet him, actress Kajol also showed up just before him. And nobody noticed her, but they did notice you. Because Sashi, Tharoor never ages. And may God keep it that way. Dr. Tharoor is known for many different things, but in his latest avatar, he's turned himself into an English instructor. If not for him, we would have never come to know of the word Farrago. Farrago distortions. Farrago of distortions. That is the latest. Dr. Tharoor, until 2013, was the most followed in social media. It took Prime Minister Modi to beat him. Even today, Dr. Tharoor is being followed by no less than 5 million. And I suspect, other than about 10,000, the rest must be women. And some of them might be from Pakistan. But, social media has no boundaries, and so does Dr. Tharoor. He has no boundaries. He has authored 16 books, the last of which is Speech, which was turned into a book, a speech in 2015 at Oxford Union, decrying British colonialism, had sold 50,000 hard copies in a period of 6 months. If you sell 5,000 copies in English in India, you're supposed to be a best-selling author. You're 10 times best-selling author, Dr. Tharoor. Then. And that speech of his was watched by at least, only in one site, there were 4 million viewers. His speeches on India's soft power, on education, was seen by 1 million to 2 million people. This is the most appropriate individual to have launched the book on M.G.R. because M.G.R. signified glamour. The only non-filmy person in India who is glamour itself is Dr. Tharoor. And I owe a lot to him because not once but twice he brought me into the UN. And I'm very grateful to him for being here today. And I would request Dr. Tharoor to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kannan, for those extremely generous words. I must say that it's rare to have an introduction so generous. In fact, it's a kind of introduction that my late father would have been proud of, but only my mother would have believed. Anyway, respected leader R.M.V., my colleague and president of the Tamil Nadu Congress Committee, Mr. Tirunavakkara, Mr. N.Ram, Kamini Mahadevan, senior writer at Madras Book Club's Muthaiya Sahab, my good friend and the author today, Kannan, friends, book lovers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. Or as we say in Kerala, ellavarikkum ende vinidamaya namaskaram. It's wonderful to be here in Chennai. I'm afraid it's a very short visit. I came this afternoon just for this event and I'm leaving tomorrow morning, but it's a warm city in every sense, literally as well as figuratively. And I know that Chennaites are not only large-hearted and high-minded, but also keen connoisseurs of good writing, literature and the arts. I've rarely seen such a large crowd for a book release, and I'm sure that's a tribute both to the subject of the book, the quality of the author, and indeed to your own interests in words, writing, and good books. Secondly, I'm proud to say that I too am connected to Tamil Nadu, not just by being from Palakkad originally, which of course, as you know, is a sort of remnant of the Madras presidency tucked into Kerala, but also because my mother lived in Coimbatore for 15 years and I was a regular visitor when she was there before she moved back to Kerala. But most important, I'm delighted because, of course, the occasion today marks a centenary of the birth of M.G.R. back in 1917. He was originally from my native Kerala. His family comes from the same district, Palakkad. But in many ways, I think he was more Tamil than the Tamils themselves. Still, he was seen very much as a local hero by all of us Palakkadans. On my childhood visits to village cinemas in rural Kerala with my cousins and uncles and so on, I became a huge fan of M.G.R. in my own childhood. And the only Tamil I knew then were M.G.R. dialogues that I could actually rattle off with some modest comprehension. Unfortunately, I've lost that talent today, or it might be more useful in Indian politics that I only remembered all of those wonderful lines. But anyway, nothing could be more befitting than chronicling the life of this actor-politician who walked the earth like God, but to do so for posterity in an objective manner, which is what Kannan has tried to do. And I'm really pleased that Kannan is the one, especially as Kamini said, after his very good biography of Anna, which I had the great pleasure of launching here 7 years ago. I want to commend Penguin for commissioning him to do this, to take on this particularly interesting subject. Now, M.G.R. was, of course, the first Indian superstar to conquer the political realm. He was a third-class dropout, but he was a rare, if raw, genius. And he was a genie also because he, like the legendary genies who came out of bottles, he could conjure, in his case, lakhs of people at his will, and make people like my good friend, Mr. Tirunavakarasar, and the senior leader here, Mr. R.M.V., take him as their leader. So, for that reason, he was not just a genius, but also a genie. And I heard Mr. Tirunavakarasar saying once famously that M.G.R. was the one and the rest were zeros who gained value because of their association with the one. And perhaps, certainly for many decades, the only one. 30 years after his death, the national parties, including my own Congress, are finding it difficult to make a real comeback in Tamil Nadu because M.G.R.'s independent political emergence snuffed out in many ways all our hopes at that time for Congress as the alternative to the DMK. M.G.R.'s first lasting impact on Tamil Nadu politics was to change it from a contest between a Dravidian party and a national party, between the DMK and the Congress, to one principally between two Dravidian parties. In fact, in 1971, the Congress, under our late great leader Kamaraj, was expected to return to power. All the political pundits were expecting that. But the DMK was, as you know, voted back to power with a crushing majority, and M.G.R.'s campaign, as Kannan records in some detail, played no small part in it. If M.G.R. was a force that the nationalist forces could not overcome when he was in the DMK, he grew even more formidable after he broke company with his parent party and set up his own party, because then he was indeed the AIADMK in the eyes of the public. What was remarkable was that the man whom so many thought would not last the rough and tumble of Indian politics and public life showed his grit, his stamina, his determination, and his thick skin to overcome the very many challenges and indignities of a political career. Frankly, it's an inspiring story. People like me who have come into politics from a different world and have also had to suffer some of these same challenges can only admire him for the way in which he faced up to them and overcame them. Yes, there were compromises and setbacks, which Kannan chronicles with commendable candor. But he still made history, MGR. And the irony is, and I suspect that Mr. Tirunavakarasar will agree with me, that in his heart of hearts, MGR was a congressman. He had a puja room, which I don't think DMK members were supposed to have. The puja room sported a portrait of Gandhi, along with the gods and his mother's image, and one of his heroes was Netaji Bose. But he certainly succumbed to the Dravidian movement's appeal and the charm of the DMK patriarch, Karunanidhi, and he threw in his lot with the DMK early on in the early 50s. It was a calculated risk at that time, because obviously the Congress was the ruling party and DMK was a very fledgling movement, but it paid off. In 1967, the DMK was voted to power for the first time, and the posters of an MGR, shot by M.R. Radha and sitting in his hospital bed, appealing for votes, played a very big role. In fact, there's a very interesting, R.M.V. was pointing out to me that in this book, there is a very rare photograph of MGR injured with a bandage around his neck at that time in 67. And it's a very famous photograph. I was a child, but I remember seeing it at that time, but it hasn't appeared very widely. So the photos in the book are also very, very important. The chief minister designate of the DMK in 67, Annadurai, was so impressed by MGR's appeal to the public that he actually sent a list of his cabinet nominees to MGR for his comments and approval. That was something I didn't know until I read Kannan's book. When Anna passed away in 69, just a couple of years later, MGR played the kingmaker, and he repaid his debt handsomely to Kalanya by helping him to become the chief minister. The MGR's charisma and popularity were unparalleled. No other actor, except NTR, of course, in Andhra Pradesh, the then undivided Andhra, could emulate his success. But NTR, as we know, lived to see a difficult political ending, whereas till the end, MGR stayed at the top and was helped very much by Providence. MGR's own life of poverty and struggle, his careful image building, the conversion of his mass appeal into votes, is singular in electoral politics and public affairs. And I'm very glad to say, as he graciously mentioned, that I was able to rope him back in a second time. Those were the days when the UN was still expanding. Today it would be a very difficult chance if someone made a decision like that today. But I always knew that the fire in him for a public career had not disappeared. It was just, as the expression is today, had just been put on the back burner, and that he was going to eventually do what I had done and come back to try and make a difference at home in this country. And last year he took some time off during the state general elections. He was on the other side from Tirunavakarasar and me. We were campaigning for the Congress. He was the second lead spokesperson of the DMK. But even though we were on the opposite sides, I was very happy for him and for the DMK. I even wrote to him saying that I hoped he would be the DMK's Derek O'Brien, and that should happen sooner rather than later. But of course, I was careful not to tell him to be the DMK's Shashi Tharoor. But honestly, I think he would be a great asset to Mr. Stalin's leadership. He would be an excellent representative of the DMK in a place like Delhi, where, as you know, wonderful mellifluous Tamil doesn't go very far. You do need to be able to communicate well in English or Hindi and to be able to appeal to a national audience, and the DMK could benefit, I think, from having someone like Kannan joining his illustrious colleagues in Delhi in any capacity, with his quarter century now of experience at the international level of the UN, his own competence, his organizational ability, as we can see with all of you present here, his people skills. I think he's now well prepared for a larger role, and that I would encourage him to leave Basra and Iraq behind. They have their own problems, but let the Iraqis deal with them now. Come back to Tamil Nadu, come back to India, and take up a public career in full earnest. And if the DMK can't utilize his services, I think Tirunavakara and I will talk about whether we have alternatives to offer in the rising new Congress party of Tamil Nadu. But let me tell Kannan that whatever he does in public life, he must not stop writing. Kannan, this is for you. Kannan, I'm giving you some advice. Whatever you do in public life, and you must do it, you must not give up your writing. I think that with Kamini sitting here, I do congratulate Penguin for having commissioned him to do this. I think that we should get him now to do some more books. He can do it in addition to being a politician. I can show him how. Just sleep very minimally and you'll be able to do it. Maybe working on Kalanya's key messages, speeches and writings, maybe a history of the Dravidian movement, borrowing from what he wrote about Anna and Karunanidhi, maybe a book on Kamaraj, maybe a travelogue on Tamil Nadu or a sociological account of Tamil Nadu today and tomorrow, maybe a study of the welfare politics of Tamil Nadu and the implications for the rest of the country. Lots of things he could do justice to, and I would encourage Penguin to not let go of him yet. And certainly, fond though I am of the UN, I should say to Kannan that like me, one day he should say, been there, done that. Come back and contribute now to our homeland. With that, let me say how very pleased I was to release this fine biography. I want to congratulate Kannan once again on writing M.G.R. and Life, and I wish the book all success in keeping alive the name of that great Tamil hero who was still also a Malayali. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
If you like our videos and channel, please like and subscribe.